Solutions Review presents the Insight Jam Expert Keynote.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you a little bit more about AI and specifically how AI and AI agents entering our workplaces and the things that we do every day is going to change what we do and how we do it. For a little bit of context about me, I am an AI ethics researcher, but I'm also a power user of the technology. I use AI agents and all of the different AI tools and platforms out there every single day. So I live in a messy space between this is amazing and cool and super helpful, and there are risks that we need to be talking about. Small ones, big ones, existential ones. We're not going to get into that today, but today what I do want to talk to you a little bit more is about some of the shifts that we're seeing in the landscape and what they mean for you, for your business, and for all of us. So to understand why this is a big deal, especially right now, we need to step back for a minute and take a little bit of a look at the environment all around us. And that's where I'd like to start. I do want to emphasize that because things are evolving so quickly, this is one of my favorite quotes. And it talks a little bit about this idea of vertical learning and adapting. And we're no longer living in a world where you can learn something once and then have it serve you for the rest of your life. Check that off your list. I learned about AI. I learned about agents. Your potential now is really defined by your ability to be agile. And that's something I really hope that we can keep in mind throughout this AI journey that we're taking today together and as we move forward. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about what's changed. So imagine that we were at an intersection where overnight the speed limit changed from 30 kilometers an hour, and I am Canadian, so we're talking in kilometers, to 300 kilometers an hour. And if you're good at math, you can probably do that conversion. But really, this mismatch is where a lot of the risks that come from AI and especially AI agents come in, because we've built these human organizations that run on human policies and human workflows and human decision processes built for a human pace. And now we have these AI agents that update all the time and they act instantly and people are using them without really understanding how they're using them. So to understand why this gap matters, we need to look at a couple of moments in human history where AI first came in and we did it right or we did it wrong and what that means now. Tristan Harris, who is an AI ethicist who I really respect and admire, talks a little bit about our first contact with AI versus our second contact. And our first contact with AI was actually social media. And we haven't done that super well as of right now. Social media has subtly and over time shaped our attention through recommendation algorithms that are deciding what to show us next. And it's actually had this result of fracturing our attention and eroding our shared reality. Now with agents, we're into this direct second contact with these AI tools that can curate content, but it can also imitate people. It can also persuade beliefs. And with agents, it can actually take actions inside of our organizations that we may not have total understanding of or control of. And so the stakes are higher. They were high before, they're higher now. So how we handle this is going to be really important. So I'd like to tell you a little story. This is actually one of my favorite analogies to use because I think crows are amazing. And I want to tell you a little bit about birds and what we can learn from these Sendai crows about how we approach adopting AI and AI agents strategically and ethically within our organizations. So this model is actually based on crows that were studied in Japan. And I have some footage to show you because I think it's important to see it in action. And I will tell you, this footage is from the 1990s. It's from the last century. But I think there's something really interesting about seeing it live and real and that kind of grainy edge in a world where everything is super uncanny valley and AI. So let's take a quick look. In this particular area of Japan, these crows love walnuts. Walnuts are their favorite, especially these heart-shaped walnuts. The problem is that their shells are too hard for crows to crack open with their beaks. And so crows have adapted by trying to drop the nuts from high in the sky onto the pavement. Sometimes they crack open, sometimes they don't. This guy wasn't so lucky. But this is a strategy that they've kind of adopted to try and solve their walnut problem. As Japan became increasingly urban, there started to be more roads and more opportunities for crows to do this. So they took a look around and thought, how could we do this better? And this is what they came up with. They took a look around and realized, hey, there's these intersections. And they realized that if they drop the nuts from an intersection down into the traffic, and if they were patient, that a car would eventually come along and run it over so that they could get the nut or the meat of the nut that was inside. And they were able to solve that problem. It was very, very strategic and smart, and they used a lot of experimentation to do that. But then obviously, they ended up with an entirely new problem, which is how on earth do I ever get this meat without getting hit by a car? But they came up with a solution for that as well, actually. They actually learned how to use the traffic signals and walk on the walk sign so that they could safely get to the nut that they'd cracked open. They learned how to strategically drop it in the right place so that they could access it safely and actually reap the rewards without being harmed. So they came up with this innovative solution using technology they didn't necessarily ask for in a way that was still safe. So here's the model that I want to spend, the next 20 minutes or so talking through. You have a new tool. You have AI. You have AI agents. You have AI assistants. And really, these tools are amazing. They're powerful enough to crack anything open. When you introduce this technology into your own personal workflow or into your organization, there are some things that we need to think about, but I think we can take this crow model to be able to help us do it. And here it is. Here's your pattern. See the traffic, watch the landscape, understand what's happening, and learn what's going on before you just dive in. Place the nut, be strategic, and then wait for the light and understand the safety signals to be able to fulfill what you need to do safely. So that's basically our wireframe for what we're going to talk about. I do want to point out something interesting is that, and I don't know if there'll be any people here who feel this way, but in my work, I talk to a lot of people who are really uncomfortable and uneasy about AI in general, using AI, incorporating AI. You probably have people like that in your life as well. I think it's important to point out that most birds hate traffic, avoid intersections, fly away when a car comes by. And crows, that was probably their natural instinct at one point. But instead, they decided to lean into how could this new thing that I don't understand and that seems scary on the surface be able to help me solve a problem that I have. So instead of moving towards that instinct to shy away, or even our instinct to kind of go headfirst into something that may not be wise immediately, I'm going to encourage us to use intelligence, something that we have the human element of intelligence that goes beyond the artificial intelligence as we approach this safely. So step one, see the traffic. That really is kind of the most important part, is that landscape scan. I have no doubt that when roads started moving into the communities where these crows lived, they were like, what's happening? We don't understand this. How do roads work? When they decided to use intersections, they were probably had to watch and figure out that red means stop, green means go. When this happens, and be able to understand what was happening all around them. So as a leader, as an individual, you need to understand specific things before you're leveraging things like AI agents or AI into your work. So let's just talk a little bit, and I'm sure we have a variety of people here. I want to talk a little bit about what these kind of agents are, because I feel like, and based on the conversations I have, everyone's like, oh yeah, AI agents, and everyone is trying to pretend they know what's going on. And a lot of people don't like to admit they may not know what an AI agent is or what it does or how it works or what makes it different. So at the risk of you all already knowing this, I'm going to just give a little bit of context. Basically, an AI agent is a tool that is goal-directed. And it's an AI tool that is context-aware, it can use tools, and it can act kind of on its own. It can notice things without you telling it what to notice. It can decide what to do without you explicitly telling it what to do. And then it can do things on its own. There's an important difference between automation, AI assistants, and then AI agents. So automation is what handles the repetition. So if you ever had like a Zapier automation where if this happens, then do this, you could build these systems that were almost like a domino that would do specific things. And they had a very specific set of rules. If this, then this. And if something broke, that was it. Often it required you to move information outside of your organization to a third party. So automation would handle sort of a lot of repetition of your work. AI assistants are what might be what you're using right now for ChatGPT to help you brainstorm, come up with ideas, write things. It might be built into your Copilot. But agents are handling operational judgment within Guardrails. So most organizations are using all three or starting to use all three. The problem, because when you start treating agents like automation or automation like agents, but really there's a lot of important differences between these things. Really, what makes something an agent is actually four different things. In order to be an AI agent, it has to have a goal, has to have memory or context, it has to have the ability to make decision rules, and then the ability to actually take actions. If it's only talking to you, it's not an agent. If it's only making decisions based on rules, it's not an agent. So agents can reduce repetitive work, speed up decision-making, catch things that humans might miss, scale things, and kind of get things done on their own. But they also make mistakes, need guardrails, and reflect values in their systems and their decision-making that you might not even know are there. So where you may have already encountered AI agents, if they're not necessarily in your business yet, they may be working behind the scenes in your Microsoft Copilot. But if you've been using things like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Grok, they have a feature called Deep Research. And this is actually one of my favorite tools. You ask it to go off and research you something, and it will go away for 10 minutes and conduct research for you using 50 to 100 sources all over the internet, do the research, write a report for you the whole time while you're doing something else, and then it will just let you know when it's done. This is a really easy form to understand like how an agent works. You give it instructions, it goes off, it decides what's important, it decides how to structure things, and it gives you a final output. So if you've never really experimented with an AI agent before, as part of your landscape scan, conduct a deep research report for free in Google Gemini. Where else we're seeing this kind of task automation or these AI agents show up are actually in a few really, really interesting places. For example, ChatGPT just launched a few weeks ago this shopping agent in ChatGPT where you can tell it what you're shopping for and it will go off and do all the shopping and comparison for you and then just bring you back things that it thinks that you will like. Another feature that's within some ChatGPT accounts, like mine here, is this, it's called Pulse. And so it will research things that you've been talking to ChatGPT about or things you might be interested all night long and then give you a summary or a report over what it thinks you might care about the next morning. So these are really AI agents at work. Again, there are lots of different types of shopping features. You can actually purchase things right within ChatGPT now. So these are all different types of agents. It is, though, important to note now we're seeing things like AI agent browsers. So what I've got on the screen here is an organization that I was working with, and you can use ChatGPT Atlas as an AI agent within the browser. And what I asked it to do was to actually go and research this entire website for any broken links. And it went through on its own, took control of the screen, and went through and checked every single link on the website on its own. I've also done this in a way where I had it work within my Google Drive and go through and rename all of the chaotic mess that was in my Google Drive with very, very specific naming conventions. And I didn't have to do anything. I just gave it instructions and watched it work. I think the most interesting and the most recent and the best kind of agent I've seen come out recently for personal use is actually Google Workspace Studio. This came out 1 week ago. And it's giving you the ability right now within your Google Workspace to build an agent that can do absolutely anything you want it to do with all of your Google infrastructure. It really is my favorite release, probably of 2025. You can build it, but it will act as an agent. So for example, what I've done here on your screen is you can see that when someone submits a form to my website for a potential client, I have it create a folder specifically about that client. And then I have Google Gemini act as an agent, go through the entire request, summarize the whole thing for me, go off and research the organization that contacted me and generate a report, and then send all of that information to me in an email, add it to a document, and then add it to a row to a spreadsheet for me so that I can keep everything organized. And I don't have to do anything for this. It's just kicked off when somebody enters something on my website. So these are the types of AI agents that you might be seeing in your everyday life. So now let's talk about some of the practicality stuff. From an organizational standpoint, regardless of the size of your organization, you should know that the traffic is already moving and AI and AI agents are already operating within your organization, whether you sanction them or not. There's a few different reports and they say all different things, but one of them, the Walk Me report, says almost 80% of employees are using unapproved AI tools in some way at work. That could be granted that maybe the policy isn't keeping up with tools that are actually useful, but maybe not officially on the approved list, or people are just blatantly using them. But only 7.5% of them have received extensive training on these tools. There's endless surveys with numbers about how many people are using AI at work secretly or uploading confidential or sensitive data into these tools. A lot of people are using what's called shadow AI. So you're not starting from zero. It's important to know that this is already happening in your organizations. And so there are risks, obviously. Part of the most important things, if you're in a position as a leader to be able to manage this, and as part of your leader kind of landscape scan, you need to know, like most organizations aren't using one big monster AI agent to do everything for them at once. They're using small, boring agents that have one goal, clear rules, very tight guardrails, human override. Things like you may be seeing it in your QuickBooks, these little agents that their one job is to just categorize your transactions. And that's where agents really are the most useful, because sometimes when they're scaled bigger, there can be a lot of problems. There's no shortage of news stories about AI tools kind of gone rogue, especially when they tend to operate on their own without any human oversight. We don't have time to deep dive into it today, but I would encourage you to seek out this Deloitte Insights report. It actually came out in the last couple of months. It's really interesting. It talks a little bit about how 30% of companies are exploring agentic AI, 38% are piloting them. Only 14% of them feel actually ready to be doing this. So just to kind of get a sense, the bottom line is that, to be totally honest, like nobody really knows what they're doing and what's going to work or not. So that's where kind of the next part of our CROW strategy comes in. So this whole idea of like watching the landscape and understanding how things are working and what's working and not working before just diving in is really a critical part of this preparation element. So watching the traffic really means strategy. Experiment with these agents on your own, in your Google, in different ways so that you can understand them. Scale what you do on a daily basis in your personal life or your personal work down to the smallest possible tasks. This is where most people struggle. You have to start with things that are very, very small. Like when someone submits a form, this happens. When this one thing happens, don't start with trying to build something that's going to solve every problem at once. And really understand your internal workflows and map them out to figure out where AI agents will be useful. And as an ethicist, here is like my number one tip, just start identifying what could go wrong. So I really actually recommend you use a tool like ChatGPT or Google Gemini to do this. Start having a conversation about, I'm thinking about introducing agents here. This is what I do. Give me 100 ways this could go wrong. And just start really thinking about all the worst case scenarios. Another good strategy is to figure out where AI is happening in your organization. The shadow AI, start making it safe for people to talk about how they're experimenting with these things, how they're using them, what's working and what's not working. But really recognizing that AI agents plug into real infrastructure and there can be real consequences and real data leaks, and don't move until you understand the patterns of the traffic. Step 2, drop the nut and experiment. So you'll notice that the crows in our video didn't drop 10,000 nuts at the same time. They dropped one at a time. They watched to see if they dropped it in the right spot for the car to run it over and to be able to retrieve it from the crosswalk. They used a low height. They had kind of escape options. If it didn't work, they had a backup plan. Interesting stats for you is that 88% of senior executives plan to increase their AI budgets over the next year, specifically for AI agents. Knowing that a lot of the other data tells us that a lot of the senior executives have no idea what they're doing when it comes to AI and are super disconnected from what they think is happening in their organization with AI and what's actually happening. Because 78% of those leaders admit that they actually don't even trust these agents at all to make the right decisions, but they're adopting them anyway. So we really could be sleepwalking into this accountability crisis. As I mentioned before, the ways that some organizations are choosing to kind of drop the nut here is with these small tasks. We're seeing it in banking specifically, used for lots of different things, but they all have that narrow task. And there is good impact. So for example, a BCG analysis talked about how there was 40% faster response time to emails. JP Morgan says that their use of AI tools and AI agents has really driven productivity in their organization. So this is a model example of they found places that maybe it's not making decisions about money, but they did find areas where these AI agents would be useful. A narrow scope by design is critical for so many reasons, but really one agent, one job, one outcome. Think smaller than you want. Don't have a general purpose agent that does tons of different things. Start small because a lot of failure comes from agents doing too much, not from doing too little. It's very rare that you end up in trouble because you have an agent that is doing too small of a task. Most pilots, and this is to tell you, if you start experimenting with agent and it sucks, don't worry about it. Most pilots are failing quietly. And you'll notice this as you start building just your own little personal AI agents on the side, which is I highly recommend because then you'll understand how they work and where they break. But just know that about 95%, according to MIT, 95% of generative AI pilots fail. And a lot of the reasons that they fail is they don't have well-designed workflows. So you really have to, again, scale it back, think through what you want it to do. And just like the crows probably realized the first time they dropped a nut, it probably missed. It probably didn't do exactly what they wanted. They had to readjust the strategy. The first attempt is really about what you learn and what breaks and what works and what doesn't. So really experiment safely and on your own. As I mentioned, I strongly recommend you start with something like the Google Workspace AI agents. It's safe. It is easy to use, very intuitive. And it will be a really good place to understand how agents work and teach you some of those building workflow things. So good experiments on a small scale or a big scale have to do with one job. We talked about this, right? Or one team gets ownership of this. Something that is reversible, something that is not going to be irreversible or irreversibly damage data. So you don't necessarily want to have an agent that wants to, that you're going to allow to rewrite entire files because if something goes wrong, that could be problematic. You want an AI system and you want to develop an AI agent where everything that happens is logged so you can go back and see exactly what happened. And most of them have this, but that needs to be really a strong focus and something that you can evaluate. And you need to set aside time, whatever you're doing, to go in and say, let's take a look at this. What worked? What didn't? How effective was this? Did this save me time? You're learning kind of the physics of the intersection here and what works and what doesn't. Really, the key takeaway for this whole drop the net session is start small. Don't do it in mission critical kind of settings. If you were a crow, you wouldn't want to be starving and your whole life depended on this one nut dropping and being cracked in this one way. You would give yourself a little bit of flexibility and grace. Begin with narrow experiments. In places where the failure you can see, impact is contained, you can learn and get feedback quickly, and a few of the other things that we're going to wrap up with here in the next 5 minutes. So finally, the crows had to learn how to use the traffic signals to stay safe. So guardrails and governance before scaling this bigger and beyond your control. And part of what I do as an AI ethics researcher is we Research like when things go really, really bad, and some of the really, really big potential problems, right? Like when AI agents are making decisions that impact people's life for the worse, right? Like, sorry, your mortgage is denied because an AI agent told us this information. That might not apply to you, but there are a lot of lessons we can take from that might apply for you. We need to, again, take the lesson from the crows here in that they didn't just stop eating walnuts. They found a way to actually solve the problem and get what they needed safely. I'm a huge fan of AI and AI agents. I told you, it's amazing. And if you do it the right way and you use them safely with accountability, I think they can be a major asset to your business. The trick is just going to be to install the real traffic lights and not just like wander out haphazardly into the middle of an intersection and not expect something to go wrong. I don't know if anyone's joining us from the EU. I do my research actually at Edinburgh in Scotland, so we do a lot with the UK. A lot of the same things don't exist here, but a lot of them are really, really good policies and practice that may exist where you're at. But really, a huge one has to do with kind of this idea of human oversight and doing your best to predict what might go wrong. An example that you should probably know about stems from a lawsuit with Character AI, which is more of like an AI assistant, but it takes on the role of people and chats with people like a friend. And there's been some cases where children have been given bad advice, in some cases deadly, by characters on this platform, which has led to a lot of really, really big legislative changes in places like California that may impact your business. So if you're deploying an agent that may violate some of the laws that exist and any of your customers live in some of those states, you really have to make sure that you understand some of those things that have really big implications now. For example, if there's any chance any of your AI agents might be interacting with children, there'll be a lot of things that you really need to know about how they can take on human qualities. So it's going to be really, really important that you understand that landscape for sure, to be very careful about your humans imitating human intimacy. Making sure that you have a human in the loop at all times. We hear this over and over, but AI systems can't be accountable when things go wrong. And someone needs to be accountable, which is why there needs to be a human in the loop, but it has to be done in a meaningful way. There's something called automation bias, where even if a human's in the loop, they just automatically start to think that the AI probably knows better, and they just go along with what the AI says, whether or not it's true. So it has to be a meaningful human in the loop, making sure the AI is doing the right thing. You also need to know there's a lot of bad actors and bad people who are using AI agents back against companies, or, for example, in the Atlas AI browser, who are giving your AI agent bad instructions. So you need to work closely with your cybersecurity team or your tech department to make sure you're doing this in a way that's safe. We saw some examples of where these agents and AI systems were reversed back onto organization. So just to kind of quick recap, you need to make sure for your traffic lights, you have clear permission boundaries. Who gets to decide what these agents do? Who is logging everything they do? How is that logged? How are you understanding if it's working or not working? If something goes wrong, what happens and who's responsible? What are your policies about this? How are you making sure people aren't harmed? How are you following your duty of care? Knowing that traffic lights don't just fully eliminate danger at all. They just make the danger a little bit more manageable, but humans always need to stay responsible. And again, going back to that very first slide about how we have to adapt to the landscape as we go, make sure the big human things like hiring and firing, moving money, legal decisions, policy decisions, discipline decisions are never done by an AI agent. You run into a lot of problems in that way. So just to kind of recap, use the lights, figure out what the lights are, what they do, how to keep your organization or you safe before you use them. Follow the example of our crows, observe, experiment, and then govern. And remember that AI and AI agents are powerful, but they're also very, very unpredictable, and they require structure and human governance always. It's not about slowing down your innovation necessarily. It's about crossing the road without getting crushed. So just like crows learned how to harness the technology to their advantage to help them solve a problem, you or your organization can use and leverage these AI agents to stay safe with AI. And your job isn't necessarily to move fast. And I want you to move away from that sense of urgency and move towards wisdom and measure and balance, but also strategy. That's going to be the secret. So thank you for being here. Would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions.
For video highlights, replays, and more, visit insightjam.com.